know that feeling when you walk into a meeting thinking it's about your promotion, but it's actually about corporate telling you to smile while they pick your pocket? That's exactly what happened to me last Tuesday at Morrison & Associates, and what I discovered next will make your blood boil. I'm Sarah Chen, and I've been grinding as a senior marketing analyst for 3 years in downtown Seattle. The rain was pelting against the 23rd floor windows of our glass tower when Joyce Ross from HR called me into conference room B. She had that fake smile plastered across her face. You know, the one where their eyes look like they're calculating your severance package. "Sarah, we need to discuss some adjustments to your compensation package," Joyce began, sliding a thick folder across the mahogany table. The Seattle skyline stretched behind her, all gray clouds and corporate promises. My stomach dropped. Adjustments? I'd been expecting a raise after landing the Peterson Industries account, a $2 million deal that saved our quarterly numbers. Instead, I'm staring at paperwork that looked like it was drafted by wolves in sheep's clothing. "Due to budget restructuring," Joyce continued, her voice smooth as silk hiding a razor blade, "we're implementing a temporary 20% salary reduction across several departments. This is completely voluntary, of course, but we hope you'll see it as an investment in the company's future." Voluntary. Right. Like volunteering to get punched in the face. I flipped through the pages, my hands trembling slightly. 20% of my $78,000 salary meant losing over $15,000 a year. In Seattle's housing market, that wasn't just a pay cut. It was financial quicksand. "What about the Peterson deal?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "That contract alone generated enough revenue to fund 3 salaries like mine." Joyce's smile never wavered. "We appreciate your contributions, Sarah, but these are company-wide measures. Everyone's making sacrifices. Everyone." I wondered if the executives on the 30th floor got the same memo. "I need time to review this," I said, gathering the papers. "Of course. We'll need your decision by Friday." 3 days. 3 days to decide if I wanted to keep my job at a 20% discount or join Seattle's unemployment line. As I walked back to my cubicle, passing the motivational posters about teamwork and excellence, I felt like I was drowning in corporate doublespeak. My coworker, Marcus Rivera, looked up from his computer. "How'd it go? Finally get that promotion?" I slumped into my chair, staring at the papers. "They want me to take a 20% pay cut. Voluntarily." Marcus's expression darkened. "Man, that's rough. This place is getting more toxic by the day." That night, I sat in my Capitol Hill apartment, surrounded by the documents. The rain had stopped, but the gray clouds remained, mirroring my mood. I had rent, student loans, and my mom's medical bills to consider. Could I afford to say no? Could I afford to say yes? Thursday morning arrived with typical Seattle drizzle, and I made my decision. I wasn't going down without a fight. If Morrison & Associates wanted to play hardball with my livelihood, I'd show them what 3 years of analyzing corporate data had taught me about finding the truth. I started with the company's financial reports. Public companies have to disclose certain information, and I knew exactly where to look. While sipping my coffee, the good stuff, because if I was taking a pay cut, I needed premium caffeine, I dug into the quarterly earnings reports. The numbers didn't lie. Peterson Industries wasn't our only major win this quarter. We'd landed contracts with 3 other firms, totaling over $8 million in new revenue. The budget shortfall Joyce mentioned? It didn't exist. In fact, we were having our best year in company history. But here's where it gets interesting. I decided to document everything, starting with that voluntary conversation. I opened my laptop and began typing out exactly what Joyce had said, word for word. Then I did something that would later save my career. I requested a copy of the meeting notes. "Joyce, could you send me the official meeting summary? I want to make sure I understood everything correctly." Her response came within an hour. "Of course. Here's the summary of our discussion." I opened the attachment and nearly choked on my coffee. According to Joyce's version, I had expressed enthusiasm for contributing to the company's cost-saving measures and agreed to the temporary salary adjustment pending final documentation. Agreed? I never agreed to anything. I'd asked for time to review, but Joyce's creative writing exercise gave me an idea. If she was documenting fictional conversations, maybe other employees were getting the same treatment. I started reaching out to colleagues carefully. During lunch at the Pike Place Market, I met with Patricia Wright from accounting. Over clam chowder and sourdough bread, she revealed she'd received a similar offer. 20% cut, she said, stirring her soup absently. They said it was temporary, but temporary has a way of becoming permanent around here. Did you get meeting notes? I asked. Her eyes widened. Yeah, and they completely misrepresented what I said. Made it sound like I was grateful for the opportunity to earn less money. We weren't alone. By Thursday afternoon, I'd connected with 5 other employees who'd received identical offers, complete with creatively edited meeting summaries. Stephen Thompson from IT, Casey Young from sales, even Betty Long from customer service, all facing the same voluntary pay cuts, all with falsified documentation. That evening, I sat in my apartment overlooking the Space Needle, surrounded by printed emails and documents. The city lights twinkled below, but I felt like I was uncovering something dark in the corporate shadows. I created a folder on my personal drive, Morrison Truth Project. Inside, I organized every document, every email, every screenshot. If Morrison and Associates wanted to play games with our livelihoods, I'd make sure I had all the pieces on the board. Friday was deadline day, and I had a choice to make: submit to the pay cut or fight back. But as I stared at Joyce's falsified meeting notes, I realized there was a third option, one that would expose their entire scheme. Friday morning, I walked into Morrison and Associates with the confidence of someone holding a royal flush. The Seattle rain had finally stopped, and for the first time in days, sunlight streamed through the office windows. Even the motivational posters seemed less patronizing. I'd spent Thursday night crafting my response, and it was beautiful in its simplicity. If Joyce Ross wanted to play creative writing with meeting notes, I'd give her a masterclass in documentation. At exactly 9 a.m., I knocked on Joyce's office door. She looked up from her computer, that same manufactured smile spreading across her face. Sarah, perfect timing. I was just about to follow up on your decision. I've made my choice, I said, settling into the chair across from her desk. But first, I wanted to clarify something from our Tuesday meeting. Joyce's smile faltered slightly. Oh? What's that? I pulled out a printed copy of her meeting notes. According to this summary, I agreed to the temporary salary adjustment pending final documentation. I don't recall agreeing to anything. In fact, I specifically requested time to review the proposal. Well, Joyce stammered, sometimes these summaries capture the spirit of the conversation rather than exact words. The spirit of the conversation. I almost laughed. I see. So when you write that, I expressed enthusiasm for contributing to cost-saving measures. You're interpreting my request for review time as enthusiasm. Joyce's professional mask was starting to slip. Sarah, let's focus on moving forward. What's your decision? I leaned back in my chair, channeling every ounce of confidence I'd built over 3 years of successful campaigns. I declined the pay cut. And I think you should know, I've discovered several other employees received identical offers, all with similarly creative meeting summaries. The color drained from Joyce's face. I'm not sure what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. Patricia Wright from accounting, Stephen Thompson from IT, Casey Young from sales, all received 20% pay cut offers, all have meeting notes that misrepresent their responses. Joyce stood up abruptly. Sarah, I think you're overreacting. These are standard procedures during budget adjustments. Standard procedures don't involve fabricating employee responses, I said, standing to match her height. But here's what I find most interesting. Our company just had its best quarter in 5 years. Peterson Industries alone generated $2 million in new revenue. Where exactly is this budget shortfall? Joyce's hands were shaking slightly as she reached for her phone. I think we need to involve senior management in this discussion. Excellent idea, I said. In fact, I've already prepared a comprehensive report documenting the discrepancies between actual conversations and official meeting summaries. I'll be happy to share it with senior management. I walked toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Joyce? I've also prepared a backup copy for the Department of Labor, just in case anyone questions the voluntary nature of these pay cuts. The look on Joyce's face was priceless. Pure panic mixed with dawning realization that her scheme was unraveling faster than a cheap sweater. As I left her office, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. The Seattle skyline looked different somehow, less oppressive and more full of possibility. I'd drawn my line in the sand, and it felt good. Monday morning brought more than just the typical Pacific Northwest drizzle. It brought consequences. I arrived at Morrison & Associates to find an email from senior management requesting my immediate presence in the executive conference room on the 30th floor. The elevator ride felt like ascending to corporate Mount Olympus. I'd only been to the executive floor once before, during my initial interview. The plush carpeting and oil paintings of Seattle's founding fathers felt intimidating then. Now, they just looked expensive. 3 people waited for me around the massive conference table. Charles Perez, the regional director, Michelle Alvarez, the company's legal counsel, and sitting at the head of the table like a disappointed parent, CEO Jacob Diaz himself. "Sarah," Jacob began, his voice carrying the weight of someone who'd built this company from nothing. "We've heard some concerning allegations about our HR practices." I sat down, placing my folder of documentation on the table. "I'm glad you're taking this seriously." Michelle, the lawyer, leaned forward. "We've conducted a preliminary investigation based on your claims. Joyce Ross has been suspended pending a full review." Relief washed over me like a warm tide. "And the pay cuts?" Charles spoke up. "All offers have been withdrawn. We're implementing a comprehensive review of our compensation policies to ensure this never happens again." Jacob's expression was serious. "Sarah, I want you to know that what happened here goes against everything this company stands for. We built Morrison & Associates on trust and integrity, and someone violated that trust." "I appreciate that," I said. "But I need to know. What about the other employees? Patricia, Stephen, Casey, and the others? They'll all receive formal apologies and confirmation that their positions are secure," Michelle assured me. "We're also reviewing their files to ensure no retaliation occurs." Jacob stood up, walking to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Seattle. "Sarah, I started this company 25 years ago with a promise to treat our employees as partners, not just labor costs. What Joyce did was unconscionable." "It was more than unconscionable," I replied. "It was fraud. She falsified meeting notes, misrepresented employee responses, and tried to coerce people into accepting pay cuts through manufactured documentation." "You're right," Jacob said, turning back to face me. "Which is why we're not just suspending Joyce. We're terminating her employment and referring this matter to the appropriate authorities." The room fell silent, except for the distant hum of Seattle traffic below. I looked around at these 3 executives, seeing something I hadn't expected: genuine remorse and determination to make things right. "There's something else," Charles said. "We want to offer you Joyce's position. Head of Employee Relations, with a significant salary increase and the authority to rebuild our HR practices from the ground up." I blinked, processing the offer. From threatened pay cut to promotion in less than a week. I need to think about that." "Of course," Jacob smiled. "Take all the time you need. But Sarah, I want you to know, what you did took courage. Standing up to corruption isn't easy, especially when your job is on the line." As I rode the elevator back down to the 23rd floor, I reflected on the week's events. Sometimes the system works. Sometimes speaking truth to power actually changes things. And sometimes refusing to be silently victimized is the most powerful thing you can do. 3 months later, I accepted the promotion. My first act as head of employee relations was implementing a transparent documentation system where all employees receive real-time copies of meeting notes and can dispute any inaccuracies immediately. Joyce Ross? She faced charges for fraud and found herself explaining to a judge why she thought falsifying corporate documents was acceptable. The Department of Labor investigation resulted in significant fines for the company, but Jacob paid them without complaint. The Peterson Industries success I'd achieved? It led to a company-wide bonus for all employees. A real one, not the fictional enthusiasm Joyce had documented. Standing in my new office, looking out at the Seattle skyline, I learned something important about corporate America. Yes, there are people who will try to take advantage of you, but there are also people who will do the right thing when presented with the truth. The key is having the courage to document that truth and the backbone to stand behind it. Because sometimes, the best defense against corporate manipulation is a well-organized folder of evidence and the willingness to use it. And that's a lesson worth more than any salary, even one that hasn't been illegally cut.